in a pandemic, you just don't know what to expect. So we kind of band together. A bunch of different departments came together to offer this service for our membership. Our senior executives really wanted to help during a time of crisis. And so we met and we said, how can we help? We want to be a part of this. And most importantly, we wanted to be there for our members and our community during their time of need. So we came together, we formed a group, we read a lot of articles.
So many articles.
Tons of regulations, tons of stuff. We had attorneys, we had everybody, it was all hands on deck. So we figured this out as we went. The rules changed a lot, as you guys know. But we did figure it out, and we're proud to say that we were able to help over 700 small business owners in the community and give out a total of $21 million in PPP loans. So we're very proud of that. And we also learned a lot along the way. It was not a smooth process for our members. And in addition, we pride ourselves in having a good member experience for our members. And we realized that during that process, it wasn't ideal. It was not what we are known for as far as having all the answers ahead of time. We just didn't have that. So we learned a lot along the way, and we decided, okay, well, we know forgiveness is coming for these loans. Let's get ahead of the ball game and let's try to make this a better experience for our members and for the community. And for those that we actually gained new members through this program. And so we said, how can we make this a better experience for them so that when this comes, because we knew it was coming, we can make it easier and we can try to alleviate some of the stress, because it was such a stressful time for everyone, mainly for our members. We know that your livelihood was impacted. There was a lot of emotions going on at that time, a lot of just unexpected things happening and things changing so much. We wanted this to be just better for you. So we met, we had a lot of meetings, we had a board in brainstorming and said, okay, here's what we ran into the first time. How can we eliminate those things from happening? The things that we can control. We understand we can't control everything.
We wish we could. Right. We definitely wish we could.
And the fact that things just changed so rapidly and we had to adapt to those changes immediately. We said, okay, let's wait a little bit. We're not going to roll forgiveness out in the beginning because we knew that things were going to change, and they did, didn't they,
yes.
Naomi? Oh my gosh.
I think the day before we started actually helping members with this process, they changed everything and came out with 2 more applications that changed the process.
Right.
So we actually started the day those applications went live.
Right. So we understand that a lot of our members were a little upset because we're like, we just want to apply for our forgiveness and get this underneath us. We thank you for being patient and working with us, because we really were trying, we had your best interest in mind, and we really were trying to make this better for you. Yeah. So Naomi's going to kind of go through what we're looking at now as far as forgiveness is concerned.
So we're going to go through the process of how we handle things here at Addition Financial with the PPP forgiveness. We're also going to, hit some frequently asked questions of some of the stresses and the aggravations that some of our members are having when they're filling this out. So hopefully this will help you when you're filling out your PPP application. So if Addition Financial is your lender, we actually call everybody and say, hey, we've started working on PPP forgiveness. We would love to help you with this if you have a moment to speak about it. And we actually take the time to go through the application with you step by step so you know exactly what is expected for you to do. We have actually called every single one of our members that have received a PPP loan from us. So if you're listening in and you haven't talked to anybody here at Addition about your PPP forgiveness application, I would check your voicemail and check your emails, because in your voicemail and emails, we're giving you guys our direct extension to call back the person that is specifically in charge of your entire PPP forgiveness application and the process for that.
And please do call us back or email us, because that just makes it so much easier for us to get it done for you. And that's obviously what we're trying to do.
And I have heard from so many business owners in the community I attend a very large church, and so there's a lot of business owners there, and they talk to me about this, and they can't even get their lenders to call them. And I just think it's so amazing that we're actually giving our members our extension.
Yes.
You don't have to go through a call tree. You literally can put in Naomi's extension, Owen's extension, Donald's extension. You can talk to a real live person. We may have to call you back because obviously we're helping over 700 members right now.
We get a lot of calls in one day.
But the fact that you actually have an email and an extension of a real live person.
Not only just a person, but the person.
Right, the person that's actually doing your application and communicating to the SBA on your behalf. So I just want to, give ourselves a little pat on the back because I know that's not happening in the industry right now. So,
and I think this was one of the biggest important change that we wanted to make learning from the last process, because so many people were calling into the contact center or not knowing who to speak to about applying for, a PPP loan. So we were really excited and really happy to make this change of giving out, direct extensions early on when the process is started, before you even apply and fill out the application. So now Owen is going to go through all the different types of applications and what is, the rules to fill out each one.
Yeah, so there are 3 different applications that the SBA provided for us. They're all the 3508 form, but there's, again, 3 different versions of it. There's a clear line to determine which path we take, though. So if your loan is less than $50,000, we get to use the 3508S form, which is our simplest version of it.
We love that form.
It's my baby.
Yes.
Absolutely my favorite.
So easy.
It's a great form. It makes everyone's day a little bit brighter here. But yeah, once we know your loan's under that 50,000 point, when we call you, I'm going to speak to you specifically about that form. If your loan's greater than that, we have a couple steps to go through because there are 2 forms. One is the 3508 long form, which is like the regular base form that the SBA has. And the other one is the easy form, which, as you might expect, is a little bit easier. And also the preference between those 2 forms.
Yes, please.
Yeah. The way we're going to determine it, if your loan is over 50,000, is there's going to be 3 kind of questions we need to ask you. If you say yes to any of those questions, then we get to use the easy form. If you can't say yes to any of them, then we have to use the long form, which isn't a problem. It's just that it's the long form.
We will definitely do our best to help you out with the long form. It is very hard, so we will try our best to help you out with that.
It has some complications to it that needs that coaching, but that's why we're calling you all, because we know it's going to be a difficulty to just provide you this form and say, here, run. It's just not going to be successful. And that's not what we're here to do. We're here to try and get you this forgiveness. Providing you poor tools to accomplish that isn't really in your or our interest. So that's why we're going to coach you through the whole process. But those 3 questions, the first one is if you are a sole proprietor, a self-employed individual, an independent contractor, or you're the only person at your business, then you get to use the easy form. You check yes to that first question and you're done. You get to use the easy form. We get to go through that with you. The other ones have a few more stipulations. So both of the next 2 questions require the same core concept, and that's that you didn't reduce the salary of your employees by more than 25% during the covered period. If you can say you did not reduce your salaries by 25% or greater, then you get to then have the follow-up questions that are going to determine it. Those follow-up questions are whether you didn't reduce the average hours that your employees worked, or that you didn't, and this is the one that always kind of trips me up because it's a lot of negatives at the same time. And so the double negatives always throw me. But you were unable to operate at the level that you previously were before COVID because of requirements established by the government, CDC guidelines, things like gyms that were mandatorily closed, places that were just not able to operate under the same capacity just because of rules and regulations. Restaurants, they had diminished capacity enforced, things like that. If you can say that you were unable to operate with the full level of activity as before because of those regulations, then you also get to use the easy form. And then again, once we ask these questions of you and determine, okay, we can say yes to this question, then we're going to go through and actually start running with the easy form itself. Or if you can't say yes, we're going to go through and use the long form with you, which starts with, some questions that Kristen's going to go over.
Yeah. So again, we learned from our mistakes the first go around. So we said, okay, how can we make this easier for our members? And on top of that, we also learned that the information that's submitted to the SBA has to be correct. If it's not correct, they ask a lot of questions, and we don't want that.
And sometimes they won't even let us hit the submit button.
Correct. So we said, okay, well, what can we pre-fill for our members? Because we already have a lot of information because of the first go around, the initial process of applying for the PPP loan. We already had a lot of information at our fingertips. So we said, okay, let's go ahead and pre-fill these forms. Once we know which form our members are going to be using, which is why you get an initial phone call, whoever is helping you, your agent will then, if it's Owen, if it's Naomi, if it's Roy, Donald, they will fill out part of the application for you. So the things that we're going to do for you is we're going to fill out your business name, your address. If you have a DBA, we're going to put that on there because we want to make sure that it's spelled right. Correct. Yes. Your tax ID number, we're already going to put that in there for you. And then your contact information. We will verify the contact information with you before we fill out this form because we want to make sure that we have your correct phone number. We understand those things change, and as well as your email address. All of this will be done via DocuSign, via your email. So it's important that that is extremely important to have the correct email address. Mm-hmm. There's also 4 things that the SBA absolutely has to have on your PPP forgiveness application in order to process it. One is your PPP loan number, and we realize that that's probably not something that you know, so we're going to go ahead and put that in there for you. The next is your lender number. So this is your number with Addition Financial because they are different. We're going to fill that in for you as well as the original loan amount. So the amount of funds that you got for your PPP loan and the very first day that you had those loans, which is called the disbursement date. So we are going to fill that out for you on the application. When you get it via your email, there will be an introductory page that will specifically tell you the things that we need for your specific application. So it's the simple form, the easy form, so on and so forth. So it will be customized to you, to the form that you are filling out. It will have, the next page will be the actual application, and it's going to have the pre-filled items for you that we're going to do. But it's also going to have some required fields. So you'll need to go in and you'll need to fill out those required fields. You're also going to be required to attach something. And we'll explain this to you in the initial phone call. So you will be able to upload your documents into the DocuSign file. And once you do that and you have completed all the required fields and attached your documents, it will then let you send that form back to your agent, who will then take it from there and submit it to the SBA on your behalf.
Yeah, and we also get an automatic notification that says, hey, Owen finished his application. So, you don't have to, send us an email or be worried that, we didn't receive it or, we missed it. Owen, Donald, and Roy and myself, we make it a point to go through all DocuSigns that we received every morning, and sometimes even twice a day if time allows us, just to go through our entire list to make sure that nobody is missed in this process.
Yeah. And we've had a number of people, I'm sure, at least the people I've been working with, I'm sure with Naomi and Donald, that have been receiving the email from the DocuSign process, and then immediately after the member will send us an email too, just to make sure. That's totally fine. Don't worry about that. We do get that automatically, so you don't really need to follow up with us. But I definitely understand the level of concern you guys have, because I would share in that. Absolutely.
This is just as important to us as it is for you guys. We know we've spoken to so many small businesses, and we know how important it is to get this forgiveness done and to get it done quickly. So please know that we are trying our best to help you out as quickly as possible with this.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, in the process, once we do receive it, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the document and make sure that it was filled in correctly. We're not going to, we're not going to submit it to the SBA wrong because it doesn't help you in that manner. So we're going to double check your document first. If the document looks great and we have supporting documents that are relevant, we're going to submit it to the SBA. But the process has a few specific deadlines. So first, once you send us documents, we have a 60-day deadline to get that submitted to the SBA. Now here at Edition, we are submitting that almost immediately. Once you send us the DocuSign, if the moment we look to see if we've received it, which should be within hours typically, or within a day typically. If you do it on the weekend, we might wait till Monday. But the moment we come in, we're going to take a look at your DocuSign. And once we look at it and see that it's good, we're going to submit it. We're not going to wait 60 days because it doesn't help us, it doesn't help you. And we know you guys would like forgiveness as soon as you can, just because that's kind of the situation we're all in. And we definitely appreciate that here. So we're going to get that in as quickly as we can for you. But once we have submitted that, the SBA has 90 days to make a decision on your forgiveness. Now the decision can come as full forgiveness, partial forgiveness, needs for more additional information, or a denial. Now we haven't received a single denial yet, so don't worry about that really being one of the cases. It's not extremely likely. It's actually not something we've seen yet. And I think we've submitted some 500 forgiveness applications and received 400 responses or something like that.
Yes.
But, so don't worry about denial. Really, we're just going to look at see what kind of forgiveness the SBA does provide. Now, one of the categories on there is the needs for more information, or needs additional information is how it's listed. That is also not something to be concerned about. From what we can tell, that's probably just random, just because I haven't noticed a specific rhyme or reason that kind of indicates which ones, because I've seen really good applications with documentation come back and request additional information. I've had ones that are a little bit on the simpler side also receive it. So it's not really clear to us.
Yeah, well, I actually read an article that the SBA is asking for additional documentation at random.
Oh,
There are some specifically, and typically it's the more difficult ones, so you have, 5,000 employees. I'm just kidding. We don't really see
I don't believe that fits the guidelines of a small business.
No, you have 50 employees and you used it for payroll, you used it for, expenses, you used it for all these different things. They are looking at those a little bit more than the simple applications. So, but the simple applications are completely at random.
Okay.
They just pick one out of the air and say, okay, we're going to ask additional documentation on this. And the thing is we're collecting the documentation anyway. We made a decision to do that, to say, we're just going to collect the documentation. So if the SBA ever does come back and say, hey, Owen, we need something more, we already have it most of the time. Mm-hmm. So it's very seldom that we would have to reach back out to you to say, hey, we need this, because we're collecting that in the beginning.
Yeah. Unless the SBA has a specific request, which we have seen a couple of times where they ask for a specific document. But for the most part, but I didn't know that. I didn't know it was actually confirmed as random. So that's good to know, because that's what I've been assuming and telling people. So that's really nice. But yeah, so those are, again, 90 days is the deadline the SBA has from when we submit it to get back to us with a response.
So now we're going to go into a little bit more detail of what each of those categories that Owen just discussed meant that could potentially happen after you submit your application. So the first one is full forgiveness. And with this, we are just as excited as you are about receiving full forgiveness. And we're so happy that this has happened for you. So the way that it works is every day Owen goes into the forgiveness platform, sometimes twice a day, to check to see if anybody's been granted any type of forgiveness.
It's definitely more than twice. I'm frantically in
there. So he goes in and he checks that out. Once he sees everybody and what they received from the SBA, he verifies that we've gotten a confirmation from the SBA explaining that it's been forgiven and what's been forgiven, and he will update a spreadsheet. From that spreadsheet, I will go in there and I will make your payments to the loan to pay it off and to remove it from your online banking and your account. Once we've done that, which I would say from receiving confirmation to receiving the funds from the SBA and to paying off the loan can take anywhere from 3 to 5 business days. we will wait until all that is completed before we call you. Because when we call you, we want to give you the good news of letting you know that it's been forgiven and there's nothing else for you to do with this. You are finished. You don't have to stress about it anymore. It is completely done.
Those are my favorite.
Yes, those are amazing phone calls to make.
Those are awesome. Yes. Well, we also have some times where the entire loan has not been forgiven. It's usually because our member got an EDIL advance. And if you received an EDIL advance, your entire loan will more than likely not be forgiven. So what do we do in those cases? Well, we will get notification from the SBA that you've received partial forgiveness. It goes through a similar process that Naomi just explained. But in addition to that, we will pay off the forgiven portion, which includes interest of the forgiven portion. And then you will have a balance left on your forgiveness loan, your PPP loan. And we will then re-amortize your loan. We'll recalculate your payment and based on the new balance of your loan. And then we will contact you to say, hey, the SBA notified us you received partial forgiveness. This is how much forgiveness you received. This is your new loan balance. This is your new payment. And this is what your first due date for your payment is going to be.
Yes, something to keep in mind is the due date does change once a forgiveness decision has been made. So as of right now, if you're with Addition Financial, you probably know that those payments, that first payment has been deferred for us to have sufficient amount of time to get forgiveness or a decision from the SBA for you. But once a decision is made, that due date moves up from anywhere like 30 days or so from when we call you.
Yeah, and when we do re-amortize the loan, it's keeping the same 1% term. We're not changing anything like that. It's just to restructure it based off of the new balance, that you're not paying a payment based off of the original balance of your loan. We're only doing it based off of what wasn't forgiven.
Correct.
Making it easier.
And you'll be receiving via email the documentation for that, because your original loan agreement has the original loan balance, has the original payment that was calculated based on those balance. Like Owen said, we're not going to calculate a payment for you based on your original loan amount. It's going to be done based on the portion that was not forgiven by the SBA. So it'll be a much more affordable payment.
Yeah.
And again, we're not changing the interest rate. It stays at the 1%. But like Naomi said, the due date will change. You will be required to make a due date sooner, because the due date pushback was only for those that had not received forgiveness yet.
And something to keep in mind is here at Addition, we are not charging any fees to pay off the loan. So if you receive that phone call that says, hey, the whole thing has not been forgiven, and you are in a place that you can pay the entire thing off, the agent will help you with that, and they'll explain to you how you can get that done, but there is no fees with paying it off at any point in time. So you can make 1 month payment now. I know it's the holidays. We are all strapped right now making that Christmas list happen. So, you can make one payment and then pay it off next year. There's no fees associated with paying the loan off.
And I just want to add to what Naomi's saying. We would appreciate if you would contact the PPP team directly. I know we've had some members go into branches and go into the contact center asking questions. They have a basic knowledge, but because this program is so in depth and there's so much knowledge that you have to have in order to answer the questions directly, it would be a better experience for you if you reached out to us directly, which again, if you've gotten a phone call, you know exactly who your agent is. Or on our website, we have our PPP team email. If you email that PPP team, it goes to everyone on the team, and we are receiving those emails throughout the day, so we can respond to those very quickly. So we recommend, if you're wanting to pay off, if you're wanting to do any of this, to contact us directly, because we'll be able to get you an answer much quicker.
Yes.
Yeah, and in many cases, we'll be able to just process that for
Correct.
you as well.
Yes, you're not going to have to go through the contact center. You're not even going to have to drive to a branch. You're not going to have to do any of that. We were very intentional with this, and the fact that we wanted our agents who are reaching out to our members to be able to do everything for the member right then and there, not have to say, okay, well, we'll have so-and-so call you back, or, literally, even if it's one of Naomi's members and they get Owen can help Naomi's member.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Owen might say something sassy to Naomi later that says, hey, I help your member, but he will help you.
I'll help you. You won't hear the sass. She will, I promise. No. But the last category that's really important is the needs more information, which we talked about a little bit briefly. But when we do get that, as I said before, we are required to notify you in writing within 5 days of us receiving the request from the SBA. Now, we're going to start by trying to call you first, ideally the same day they send us the notice. They've sent some of them that are like super late on the end of like Friday that we haven't seen till Monday. But the moment we come in on Monday, you're going to be the first call we make. And, once we're getting you on the phone, we're just going to explain to you that they have requested more information, not to panic, first of all, because it sounds a little bit scary. Hey, the government wants more information about my loan. It's, again, like Kristen explained to us earlier, it's largely just entirely random as far as the smaller ones goes. Even for the larger ones, it's not necessarily that there's a problem. The needs more information does not indicate a problem. It just indicates that the SBA wants to either A, do a spot check, or B, wants to just make sure that what we put down for what we are requesting for your forgiveness is correct. So you'll receive that request in 5 business days of them sending it to us. And we will tell you exactly what documents we think you'll need to supply. Most of the documents that the SBA actually requests are documents we received when we made the original PPP loan. So the bulk of what we need to supply is things we already possess. In the few instances where we do need more documentation from you, whoever you speak to on the phone or sends you an email, if we couldn't get a hold of you, is going to specifically say what they think is necessary. So don't worry about what it sounds like.
We'll try our best to educate you on, what's needed, exactly what they're asking for. We're going to try to be as helpful as possible to get this information put together with you, so you're not alone in gathering this extra information.
Yeah, and if it sounds like I'm stressing the point that it's not
sound a little
something
scary,
it is really because I understand how scary that sounds. My father owned a business, and if he got this from the government, he'd have been panicking a little bit, even though he had a government contract. But even then, it's not something that sounds comfortable to hear. But do not worry about it. It is not a critical situation. It is just them checking boxes, making sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. They just want to make everything as nice and a bow for them as they possibly can.
All right, so now we're going to go through some of the frequently asked questions that we've received through the PPP forgiveness process. And, we hope that these can help you as you're filling out your application.
Yeah, so the first question, do I need to apply for forgiveness now? The short answer to that is no. You don't have to apply right now. What I will say is that there's kind of a timeline as to when you can apply. And the deadline for applying for forgiveness is actually the maturity date of your PPP loan itself. So that's when, so long as you haven't made the last payment on your PPP loan, you can apply for forgiveness. I wouldn't recommend you wait that long. Obviously, the earlier you can get forgiveness, the easier it is, the more of the weight gets lifted off your mind, especially like around now with the holidays and the new year coming up and all of the uncertainty that can bring.
Also keep in mind that it could potentially take a month, 2 months, the full 90 days for them to reach a decision. So if you apply today and we submit it today, it could take a very long time for you to get a decision.
True. We have some that have still not been addressed by the SBA that we submitted. Actually, I think the very first one that we submitted still hasn't been looked at.
Yeah.
The second one that we submitted took probably 60 days before they did anything. So just know that 90 days, we're not seeing that as the norm, but it can happen. And what's more is if you get a request for additional information, when we submit the further documentation to the SBA, that clock restarts. That 90 days begins again. So if they waited 80 days to request additional information and we send them more information, once we send them more information, it can take another 90 days. So obviously the earlier you can do forgiveness, I'm trying to say it the way I wanted to, and it's just my words aren't there. The earlier you apply, the easier it might be to get that weight off your shoulder faster, just because this is a cloud that's kind of looming over everybody. Will I get forgiveness? Will I not get forgiveness?
Do I have to pay it back?
Yeah, you're not going to know until you apply. And the application process is really easy, actually. I feel like we've done a really good job of making it as simple as we possibly could. And I'm pretty happy with that. But there is no deadline until the loan is paid off. But keep in mind, if you start paying on the loan, are you going to get forgiveness for the full value?
Right. So the next question is, what is an EIDL advance? And Kristen addressed this a little bit earlier. So an EIDL advance, it stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And there is a difference between the EIDL advance and the EIDL loan. And this is something that they're asking that you put on the PPP forgiveness application. So that's why we're mentioning it here. They just updated their system, which allows your lender to actually know if you received an EIDL advance, which was super helpful because not a lot of people know what this is, or they received the loan and they don't know if they received an advance. So it's a little confusing for the member or the borrower. So thankfully, this is something that we can now help you find the information for. So the second thing is they also ask for the EIDL application number. This is not something that we have. This is something that you will have to get on your own if you do not already have it. And there's a phone number that to the SBA that you can call, and then they can give you that information. And you can just ask Owen, Roy, Donald, or myself for that phone number, and we'll provide that to you for you to call them and get that application number for you. The next question on here is, how does the EIDL affect my forgiveness amount? So unfortunately, the SBA has decided to subtract out the advance amount from your forgiveness amount, even if you use the loan correctly. And then that has been a big question that our members have had is, I used the loan correctly, I used it within the covered period, how come it's not fully forgiven? Unfortunately, that is something that the SBA has decided to do. So if you received a $10,000 PPP loan and a $1,000 EIDL advance, what will happen is they're only going to forgive $9,000 on the PPP loan, and you're going to have to pay back the $1,000 plus the interest that occurred on that $1,000.
Yeah, when the SBA sends that payment, like Naomi said, they'll forgive $9,000, but they'll also send payment for the principal on that $9,000 as well. So when we do amortize your loan, like Kristen was talking about before, the loan and the interest is all going to just be based off of the $1,000 that remains. You're not going to have to pay the interest on the full value of $10,000 before the SBA did forgiveness. They're going to also take care of that.
Yes, and this was one of the things, I know it's a pain point for some of our members, and we certainly acknowledge that this was one of the things we just didn't know in the beginning. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't part of, so we weren't able to pre-warn our members, hey, if you got an advance on an EIDL loan, it could possibly affect your forgiveness. We just didn't know. And now we do. And so we're trying to help our members as much as possible, which is why, we said, okay, we're just going to re-amortize the loan. It's a 1% loan, and hopefully that won't be as much of an impact as it could have been. So the next one is, and we actually had this come up a lot in the initial application for the PPP loans, is independent contractors, self-employed, or sole proprietors. How many employees do I have? So in this situation, it is just one. You would have one employee, it would be yourself. When you initially got the PPP loan, let's say you are a hairdresser, you rent a booth in a salon. Although there are many employees in that salon, you are your own boss. Yes. So the answer to this question would be one.
Yeah.
You are the one responsible for this loan.
And then, it kind of leads into, now that you know how to apply, what kind of documents do I need? When Kristen was talking earlier about attaching documents to the DocuSign, what are those? Well, the very first page of the DocuSign we send you will actually have a page that Addition Financial made up and attached to it that has a list, but not all of those are necessarily going to apply to you. For instance, if you are a sole proprietor or the only employee, independent contractor, what have you, you're not going to have all the same documentation. But the kinds of things we're looking for are going to be bank statements, or a third-party payroll service. If you have like an accountant, or your business that you have does accounting for itself, there's going to be a report that they can generate. And again, that's only going to be useful for the businesses that have multiple employees, because if it's just you, you probably aren't using a robust payroll system because it isn't necessary. And the SBA understands that, so they're not requiring it. Once more, for those larger business that file quarterly tax returns, the forms 941, quarters 2 and 3 are largely what we're going to be requesting, because most of our loans were funded during that time, and the covered period covers periods 2 and 3. Quarter 4 has some of them that bleed into that period for sure, but obviously quarter 4 is not done yet. So it's hard to get that documentation, although some of them do have the interim documents that I have received. But yeah, for the most part, we're looking for 941s, those quarterly tax returns. For quarters 2 and 3, we're going to be looking for a payroll report, and that's going to cover most of the documentation for payroll for the larger businesses. Independent contractors, we're looking at the checks you might have cut on the account to yourself. If you transferred it, we're going to look at your bank statement here at Addition. But if you transferred it to, say, an external financial institution that you use already, we're going to request the corresponding statements for the months that you did the transfers, just to kind of marry it up so we can demonstrate, hey, SBA, our member transferred money from their business account to their personal account, in a sense, paying themselves. Here you go. Those are the kinds of documents we're looking for. Obviously, for the larger companies, we're looking if they have the payroll statements. If you're doing retirement accounts and things like that for your employers, what are they called? Retirement plans, rather, health insurance, those types of things. We'll take that documentation as well, because that also counts. And if you have the cut checks from those, or just the records from those as well, we'll take that, because everything we can submit to the SBA is a plus for me. I want to provide them with as much as possible so that I don't have to deal with the request for additional information.
And if you have a payroll company or an accountant, a lot of times they already have a forgiveness packet that they can give you that will include all of that.
Yeah, what was it, worksheet A or something like that?
Or some payroll companies will provide you with a CARES package. So you can call them and provide them with the covered period dates, and you can get that from the agent that calls you. We will, put together the beginning and the last date for you, so you can just provide those dates to your payroll company and they can get that together. Something to keep in mind too, a good point that Owen made. So those cost of, health insurance and retirement, that stuff is included, and it's also included in your payroll costs. So a lot of people are sometimes confused of, where do I put that? You include that in your payroll costs. Yeah. And they're actually looking for your gross payroll cost. So that's also something to keep in mind when you calculate this. It's your gross payroll.
So the next one is business mortgage interest. How do I prove what that is? How do I show you documentation? If you have a copy of the lender amortization schedule and receipts or copies of checks from eligible payments, so it would be payments made within your covered period. Or you can have statements from February or the beginning of your covered period until the end that you could show. Rent or lease payments, you could have a copy of your current rent or lease agreement, copies of checks from eligible payments during your covered period. Account statements would also work. But again, we're going to repeat this over and over again. It's only for the covered period. You don't want to include things outside of that. Those could definitely be triggers for, for the SBA wanting to look deeper into things. And we're going to check those things to make sure that you guys are giving us the proper documentation, because we don't want to send any red flags to the SBA either. So just keep in mind those covered periods to make sure that you're supplying documentation for only those periods.
Yes. And the last thing that this loan paid for was business utility payments. So the first thing I want to let you guys know is what is an eligible business utility. So those can include electricity, gas, water, telephone, transportation, and internet access for which you had in place before February 15th of 2020. So this would have been services that you had on your business before you applied for the PPP loan. Those are the only ones that they are going to reimburse. And for supporting documents for this, what you can provide is if you pay it by check, copies of those checks. If you have the invoices, copies of those invoices of when you paid it during the covered period. Or if you do automatic payments or payments through your credit cards, your credit card statement, or those transfers showing that you paid that. And something to keep in mind is some small businesses have asked me, well, can I black out the irrelevant items from my, bank statement or my credit card statement showing these payments? Yes, you can. You can black out whatever is not included in the loan and just show them what is specifically you used to pay with these loan proceeds.
Yeah, and the SBA is not going to really be bothered too much by the rest of your account. I've had many people not bother about blacking out, but have highlighted the relevant sections. That's also helpful because at a glance, we can see, okay, this is the payment for your electricity. This is the payment for that. And it makes it really nice so I can look at that number and marry it up with the invoice or the bill that you provided with it.
Right, so now we're going to go through some of the questions that were frequently asked on the 3508 Easy application, which is also a popular application for those companies that got a loan larger than $50,000 and fit those criteria that Owen discussed earlier. So the first question is, what is my covered period? And I know we've been talking about that a lot on this presentation, and it can be a little confusing. So your covered period is the first day from which the loan was dispersed, and we will provide that to you on the pre-filled information that Kristen discussed earlier, and then 24 weeks or 168 days from that first date. Fortunately, the SBA just went ahead and made a decision to push everybody's loan out to 24 weeks, so you have 24 weeks of eligible costs that you can show as how you use the PPP funds. You can elect to use the 8-week period, so if you finished all of your loan funds in 8 weeks, so 56 days, and you want to put that, you finished it in 8 weeks, that is completely fine as well. You can put it there. So also, if you use the funds, so if you received the funds on April 1st, and you didn't start using the money until April 2nd, well, your covered period still starts on April 1st and goes 24 weeks out from that, but your alternative covered period, which is also on the application, can be from April 2nd, that day that you actually started using the money, because of, some people do payroll Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, once a week, once a month, they've already incurred that cost before their PPP loan was funded. You can incur costs that happen after the first date of your covered period or the disbursement date, but not before. So you cannot include costs that you received before you received the funds.
And it has to be within the whole bookends of the original covered period as well. You can't go beyond the end, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, and actually you cannot go beyond December 31st of 2020. So if you received a PPP loan that was, a little late in the game, you still have to have your last covered date as December 31st. So you have to use all that money before the end of the year.
Which I don't think we have any.
No, we didn't have any.
So another question that we get is, what if I use the funds before the end of my cover period? So you had expenses that you just know or you just decided to, you haven't gotten a paycheck for a while, so you just decided to take your paycheck, which is totally fine. You can do that. What date do you place in there? You're just going to place in the date that you actually exhausted the funds.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that is a very common question that we get.
And that's okay. Most people did use all the funds before even the 8-week period was over, because they used it for utilities, mortgage interest, rent or lease payments. So it didn't last the full 8 weeks. And that's completely fine. That's not something that goes against your application. You just have to finish the funds before the last date of 24 weeks out from that date.
Exactly. So what if I use my funds only for payroll? this is a beautiful question.
Yes.
Because I have a beautiful answer, and it's thank you.
Yes. Makes it so easy.
If you use your funds only for payroll, that means we get to skip a lot of the concerns about providing documentation for your business mortgage or rent or lease agreement, your utilities. If we can demonstrate to the SBA with documentation that you use your funds exclusively for payroll, you've just made my day, because I have to request significantly less from you in documentation terms, but also it's a lot easier for us to calculate what we need to do for the easy form to determine what your forgiveness amount's going to be.
And so the easy form will still ask you if you spent money on mortgage interest, utilities, or rent or lease. And what you can do is you're just going to put 0 there because you didn't spend any money on it. All right, so then the next part of the easy application, which causes a lot of confusion, is unfortunately the easy application does ask you to do some basic calculations. And it is kind of confusing sometimes because of the way that it's structured. So at the bottom portion of the easy application, it's called potential forgiveness amount. And sometimes this really ties people up because they're asking that you get forgiveness on the smaller line between lines 5, 6, and 7. So the first line asks you to add the amounts on lines 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that is your payroll costs, your mortgage interest, your rent or lease, or your utility payments. So you're going to add that cost there and place that on line 5. Then the next line asks you for your PPP loan amount. So that is the PPP loan amount that we provided to you on that pre-filled area. You're going to write that loan amount there. Then the line 7 asks you to divide your line 1 by 60% to give you your 60% requirement. This confuses a lot of people and actually confused me in the beginning.
I think it confused all of us in the beginning.
Yes.
I'm confused just listening to you.
Because I remember I walked over to Owen and Roy and I was like, guys, why is it asking people to divide? Because once you divide by 60% your payroll cost, it's giving you a ridiculously large number. And you're just looking at it and you're like, what is this? This has nothing to do with anything. What is this dollar amount for? So the dollar amount is actually your payroll cost plus 60%. And the reason why they ask you to do that is because line 8 asks you to give the smallest amount between lines 5, 6, and 7. And if you were to multiply your line 7 by 60% instead of dividing it, it's gonna force you to ask for less forgiveness. So we want to divide and get that larger amount for that line so that it does not affect your forgiveness amount. So then that brings me to the next question. Why is my forgiveness amount on line 8 smaller than my PPP loan amount? I want full forgiveness. I used the money correctly. Well, that's because you multiplied your, line 7 by 60%, or you didn't include all of your cost appropriately, which resulted in you getting one of those lines to be a lesser dollar amount. And I know everything that I'm saying right now is super confusing, but Roy and I are the ones that help everybody with the easy applications. We were lucky enough to get the larger dollar amounts. And if you have any questions, call us directly or email us, and we will actually walk you through the bottom portion of the application. I've sat there, whipped my calculator out, and went through this application line by line with our members because we want you to do it correctly and we want you to get that full forgiveness amount just as much as you do.
Yes, thank you, Naomi, so much. I know all of this has been overwhelming and confusing for a lot of our members, but we really are trying to make it a good experience. We want you to get your loan forgiven. We want to help you. So we will make sure that our contact information is posted. I believe it's already on additionfi.com. But just in case, we will make sure that we get with the powers that be to make sure that that resource is out there for you. So if you have questions specifically, again, you should already have our contact information because we have contacted all of our members, and you should know who your representative is with their personal extension and our email address as well. But if for some reason you don't have that, we will make sure that that's posted on our website so that you can have it. Okay, so we did get some questions from our members. Thank you so much for participating and sending in these questions. We know that your question is probably going to answer it for someone else, so we really appreciate that. So the first question, and I'm going to ask Naomi this.
Okay,
Naomi,
I'm ready.
I'm putting you on the spot. What happens if you get a loan and at the time you meet the requirements, 80% of the salaries and payments plus no reduction in numbers, right? So we've met their requirements. But then due to COVID, you had to lay employees off, unfortunately. So what happens at that point?
Okay, so the good news is the SBA actually made a change for everybody's loan that says your minimum requirement for payroll costs are now 60%, and you used over 80, or you used over that amount. So you used 80% on payroll, which is fine. You met all the requirements. You will still be able to reach and gain forgiveness. It is okay. We have had companies that unfortunately were in that situation to where their businesses had closed down or they had to let people go, after the PPP funds were depleted, and they've received full forgiveness. So this does not affect your forgiveness decision. If you use the funds correctly and during the covered period, you are great. That is exactly what you needed to do.
Yes.
Okay, so the key is I use the funds during my covered period, and I use the funds exactly as it was designed for this program, right?
Correct.
So anything that happens after that, we're good.
True.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
What's more though is, so long as you had to let people go after the covered period or after you used the funds within the covered period.
Yes.
Okay.
If you had to let people go before then we're going to have some points where it's to be sticky. But so long as you had those employees while you used the funds for covered period and you used the funds correctly, even after that, you'd be fine.
And even if you let people go before the end of the covered period, the only thing that affects is which of the applications that you need to fill out. To our knowledge, It has not yet affected anybody with their forgiveness amount. So what's going to happen is, unfortunately, you will have to fill out that long application because that allows you to explain and specifically show on that forms that you let some people go. But we will help you and we'll walk you through filling out that application. But to our knowledge, it does not affect your forgiveness amount.
Okay. So Owen, are you ready for a question?
Sure.
I have one for you. Does a regular SBA loan, so a loan that you obtained outside of the PPP program, have any effect on forgiveness?
That one's got a really short answer, and it's no. The EIDL loan is the only SBA loan, well, I guess the PPP loan as well, that has a bearing with the PPP program. And it's any loans that you have with the SBA for your business other than the EIDL, it has no interaction with the PPP. And in fact, the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan itself, doesn't interact with the PPP loan at all. It's just that advance amount. That is the only SBA loan item that interacts with the PPP forgiveness at all. So just the EIDL advance. If you have a regular SBA loan, you do not have to worry about it interacting with forgiveness, and you don't have to worry about forgiveness interacting with that loan either.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess that's it as far as questions. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and we hope that we were a good resource for you. We hope that we answered your questions. Again, if you have not heard from us, probably check your voicemail, check your emails. We have been diligently trying to contact members. We want to be here for you during this process, and we want to make sure that your application is processed accurately and as efficiently as possible. So please know that you can count on us. We are here for you, and we hope that everyone has a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
And thank you guys so much for your patience with us during this time. We know that this was stressful, and we kind of were a little slow in the beginning, and we were a little unsure about things in the beginning, but thank you guys so much for hanging in there with us. We appreciate you. We appreciate your membership. And thank you so much, and have a happy holiday.